Hello, hello, hello. Wait, hang on a second. I got an audio issue. I'm going to fix it really quick. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. It's Tuesday, March the 8th. It is also International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day to all the amazing women who are watching the show, who are friends of people who watch the show. If you know some amazing women, if you know some women today, make sure you shout out and say, hey, happy International Women's Day. We support you. I support you. I salute you. Do that for a woman you know. Doesn't matter where she is. Do that for a woman today. I mean, you could do it for a woman every day, but today is a special day. I'm super excited about today's show. We have a special guest joining us in just a few moments. I'm waiting for him to pop up on camera. I see his name in the green room. But we are going to be talking about the NFL Combine, and not just from the stuff you see on TV, from somebody who's been there for a really long time. I'm going to bring him up shortly. We're also going to talk about the Brittney Griner situation, which quite frankly is not looking really, it's not looking good, right? It's not looking good for Brittney Griner. It's unfortunate. We're going to talk about that. I also want to talk about what's happening with you Lakers fans. I know it's a lot of Lakers fans that tune into the show. And apparently, y'all out there, some of y'all harassing Russell Westbrook's family and threatening his wife and his children because you're mad about the way he plays. I can understand you being mad about the way he plays, but you can't be threatening his family. I'm going to let you hear from Russell Westbrook as well. So a lot to get to on today's show. And of course, your comments and questions. Remember, we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So anybody that's watching that you want to make sure that they can tune in, they can find Chalk Talk on any one of those platforms and they can be a part of. I think
Okay.
it's called the internet's being weird. Hey, good morning, Dwight. Welcome, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning. Can you hear me, first of all?
I can hear you and I can see you. You look great. Welcome to Chalk Talk. We're glad to have you. We've officially made you one of our experts. That means you'll have to come back again one day.
All you have to do is just invite me, and I'll be there.
So listen, Dwight, I said it on some of the things I promoted, has been advising in the space of sports and with athletes for 25 years on the business of pro sports, about also how to make money on and off the field. And I know you were involved in helping build one of the biggest sports agencies, minority-owned sports agencies, when you worked with the Postons. So you've got a wealth of experience in this space. Before we talk about the combine, I just want to ask you, how has the business of what you do changed over recent years? Because it seems like it's different now.
The business really hasn't changed that much. The competitiveness has changed because there are more sports agencies trying to get in the business, and there's probably more agents than athletes. So as
Mm.
far as recruiting, maintaining service, a professional athlete, that's still the same. Uh, there's not as much money as a rookie that's coming into the NFL as it was years ago. A lot of these contracts are already set as far as the sliding system in the years.
Let me stop you for a second. So you're saying that rookies today, with all the money that we see, there was more money in the past than there is
Yeah,
now?
yes, it was a lot more money in the past because every
Wow.
contract, every penny was negotiated. But because the salaries was going up higher and higher for the rookies, the veterans was like, why can't we get some of this money? I think the last top rookie, Sam Bradford from Oklahoma, when he got that 70 some $1 million contract, and then the
Yeah.
rookies, I mean, then the veterans like, oh no, no, they getting too much money. So with the new collective bargaining agreement that was signed, and I'm not going to say agreed by all,
Right.
it, it, the it was promised that the veterans would get the money and not the rookies. But what the veterans didn't understand was they didn't get the money. So they took it from the rookies and they hid it from the veterans. So therefore, as long as contracts are going higher and higher, everybody will get paid. But once you start lowering the contract, especially in the first round for the draftees, um, the veterans weren't getting that money. Some
Charles says
veterans got
union
it.
members working against one another, right? That's
Correct,
that's
correct,
what they do.
correct.
Wow.
So, it's so the way that athletes are getting paid now, basically, if you're the number one pick, you already basically know your numbers. There's not a
Right.
lot of negotiation going on in the first round. There's a little. Uh, I mean, you try to add some incentives. You try to do this. You try to get 100% guaranteed. You would love to get. Some people would love to get the fifth-year option if they're in the first round, and then there's sometimes that in 3-4 years, based on what you have done
Hmm.
in the NFL, not what you have done in college, can get you paid for your second contract. Basically, you're drafted on your ability of what you did in college and what you're projected to do in the NFL.
So really, you're working toward that second contract. All right. So let me ask you
Yes.
something, Dwight. I know that you and there's a ton of stuff. You and I like are always hitting each other up, although it's kind of been a minute. I want to talk about the combine. So you went to the combine, and you've been to what 20 plus combines?
Probably went to 20 combines. I mean,
20 combines.
if you're in the business of the NFL, everybody goes to the combine in Indianapolis every year. Even though I think it's about to move from Indianapolis, I'm not for sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
Why Indianapolis? I do believe that the NFL combine office is in Indianapolis. So, but Indianapolis during the month of February for years seemed like it always snowed and it's cold weather, and it's hard to fly into Indianapolis. You would have to, especially to get a nonstop based on where you're from. It's hard, so you have got to have a layover somewhere, a one stop or two stop just to get to Indianapolis. So yes, I've been there for 20 some years. It is the business of sports. It's the same hotels. It's the same routine. I mean, basically, it is the same. Um, you will see some of everybody that's dealing with the pro athletes on the business side is trying to meet, greet, start relationships with the NFL players, along with there are all the teams are represented there. You might, I mean, you might see, the cowboy bus there. You might see a few owners walking around. You definitely see the general manager and all the coaches of every position and all the scouts will be at the NFL interviewing these players and watching these players work out. The ones
So
that
let
can
me
see.
ask you something. What is it that we watch now? You can watch a lot of the workouts on television because it's
Hmm.
all about monetizing what happens. So we see a lot of that. What are some things that those of us who don't go to the combine, who may cover sports and watch it on TV, what are some things? What are some of the things that we're not seeing that you think are significant?
Well, the interaction of players. I mean, you do get the chance to see the guys on television doing the interviews. You do get to see the guys work out and so forth. But the one-on-one, just a guy walking down the street of Indianapolis, going to a restaurant or going to meet someone, and you get a chance to approach that athlete, maybe try to get, because there's a lot of autograph seekers out there, get a chance to interact with those athletes. You basically, the tailors, they're there trying to sell their products. So all athletes, especially the ones going to the green room, needs a suit. Those are things that you don't think about that happens at
Yeah.
the combine that you really don't see. So you actually see tailors measuring some of these athletes, because most athletes in the NFL cannot just go to a store and buy a suit off the rack. He has to have a tailored suit, and he should have a tailored suit because it is business. So just little things like that. The financial planners are there trying to recruit, interact, and get business. So you think about a tailor. It was surprised a tailor asked a certain athlete, uh, "You need a suit," and he said, "A suit for what?" He said, "Well, when you go visit a team, if you get invited to the draft, He said, I never thought about that. So little things like that you really don't think of, that you don't see on TV, is that these guys is trying to get their fashion brand together.
Let me ask you something. Who stood out? Did you see anything from anybody at the draft? I mean, at the combine that made you change your opinion about their ability or them being a prospect for this upcoming draft?
Okay, we're in Houston. Houston got the number 3 pick. The person that I fell in love with is the big fella from Georgia, the defensive tackle, 99, Davis. This big fella, I mean, what is he measured at? 6'6" and a half, 340 pounds plus, ran it like a 4'8". And then you turn on the tape, and now you see everything that he did at the combine. Now you turn on the tape. Watch him work out, now turn on the tape. Tape don't lie. He's a monster. To me, he's the number 1 pick. If I had a choice, that's the guy I would go after. The big fella.
With the number 1 pick, or with you mean he's the best to you?
I would take him at number 1 based on your needs.
Right.
Based on your needs, because he's gonna be the plug in your defense for the next 10 years. For the next 10 years. So you get him an edge rusher to go with him, your defense. Because in 2 seconds, 2.5, he may be at the quarterback. So now the corners don't have to play defense for maybe 3 seconds, because either the quarterback is taken off or he's sacked. Especially if you got an edge rusher coming around, because he's going to push forward.
Do you think he'll be there at 3, Dwight, or do you think somebody else will?
Well, if they're listening to me, he won't be there. Okay? But if I'm the Texans at 3, I'm taking him. If he's on the board, I'm taking him. Because they also looking at the fact that Detroit at number 2 may take an edge rusher from the University of Michigan. Hutchinson, I think his name is.
Right, yeah, Eden Hutchinson.
Great choice. Mm-hmm. Great choice. But if I'm Detroit, I would take Davis. I would take the big fella.
Really?
I mean, yes. That's the guy that really stood out. Now, it's some speed. It's a couple guys ran, 4.2, 4.3. It's some speed out there. You got some great corners out there. But if I'm the Texans, I got to start right in the middle.
What do you think about the talk about Kyle Hamilton, and are you surprised at this conversation about a safety as high as 4, as high as a 3rd or 4th pick?
I don't want to take anything from Kyle. If you love him, select him. If he's on the board at 4 or 5, and that's what you need. If you have a defense and that's what you need, a safety, but there are plenty of safety. This draft is so heavy. It's deep. At every position, it's deep.
Except for quarterback, right?
Except for quarterback. That's right. Great point. Except for quarterback. So the quarterback that would have came out in another draft, the same group of quarterback, they may be 3rd or 4th round picks. So why am I going to grab somebody at the 1st round when he's still going to be sitting there? Or he should be sitting there. Not taking nothing away from the quarterback. They have a kicker. I don't have his name right. They had a kicker that was, can punt maybe 70 yards.
Wow.
He can kick. He can field goal. He can kick field goals. He can kick off, and he can punt. If that's what you need, he's going to go high. I do believe he's going to go high. He's going to be, and now he may not take the 1st round like Janikowski did out of Tampa, went to I believe the Raiders and things like that back in the day. But I do believe there's a punter out there that's why I say the draft is so thick. It's so deep. But the big fella up front.
Yeah. Because there's some people who are saying, the Texans, there are all these mock drafts, which I really stay away from, right? Because they start doing mock drafts really after the draft ends for next year. So I'd rather talk to people who know instead of just watching 100 mock drafts. But there are a lot of people who are saying that supposedly there's this anonymous general manager who's saying the Texans should take Kyle Hamilton at 3. But it seems like, and from what I know just from covering Lovey and his approach to defense this past year, it seems like the big fella seems like more of what he'd be looking for with that 3 pick.
If he's there, I'm taking him. I won't even need the 10 to 15 minutes that they give you between selection. If
Mm-hmm.
he's there, bam, it's over. Now, also the Texans got to make a business decision with number 4, correct?
Correct.
So if you're going to trade him, this would be a great time to trade him to try to get another pick in maybe in the top 5, maybe in the top 10. If you take the big fella up front and you give him an edge rusher, that defense going to be pretty good. And you can get a safety in the second round that's going to be maybe as good as Kyle. There's some safeties out there that can play.
So there's been talk now that Lovey is the head smith. We heard an interview with Justin Reed a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, where he talked about he'd be willing to talk about coming back to the Texans, right? He's a free agent. We know how Lovey feels about him. And then Nick Caserio last week was asked about Justin Reed, and he said, hey, he'd be open to it. Do you think that he will re-sign with the Texans, or are there greener pastures for him someplace else?
Well, it's all about the money at
Right.
that point. You got to follow the money. I would compare the money that would take to sign Justin, and if you in love with Kyle, versus the money at the top 5 that you would have to pay this young man. So I would compare the money, because if you go bring Justin back, you may not need Kyle. You're going to need another safety, but there's
Right.
some free agent safeties out there. And if you put those two safeties together, you're pretty good safeties at the back end. But the back end is only as strong as if
Is what happens up front, right?
who's up front. Because you cannot guard a wide receiver more than 4 or 5 seconds. He's open. And the quarterback
Right.
nowadays is throwing that rock. So he's open. So I would probably keep Reed in-house. I don't know how much it's going to cost, but that was the problem that the Texans had over the last 10 years. Every time a young man become a free agent, he's
Right.
out of here. He's out of here. He worked his behind off to get this new contract, and he's gone. I mean, you can go back in the past and just look at all the players that have left the Texans that they had in-house. They
Right.
should have kept.
They should have kept, yeah.
They wouldn't have
Especially
number
as
3.
positions like safety and the corner. We have a whole list of those. Is there anybody, Dwight, at the draft, at the combine, you saw that you feel like their stock may have dropped because of how they performed?
I don't think stock based on who's rating these guys.
Right.
Players are who they are. I mean, if you, like you said, you were talking about mock draft. If I started mock draft, and then all of a sudden, most media or most mock draft experts, as they call themselves, probably have 32 different mock drafts, so they can always be right. So I don't think nobody, yeah, I don't think no one stock has dropped. They are who they are. It only takes one team to love you. And if they believe that you should be in the first round, the second round, the third round, that's fine. Keep in mind, it was over 300 athletes at the combine. At least one of those athletes would not get drafted. I'm just thinking. But then there's athletes that did not get invited to the combine. One of those athletes will get drafted. So everybody's going to be wrong somewhere. It's basically based on team needs.
Right.
And once you look at a body, he passed a little test. He's fast. He's strong. He's intelligent. He looks good. That's who you fall in love with. That's who you marry.
So another player that we've heard talked about in terms of what the Texans might do with that third pick is the young man out of Oregon, Thibodeau. Defensive end out of Oregon. And so I've listened to some local media reports, which I don't do a whole lot. And I listened to them talk about him and say a couple of things, and I want to know your thoughts about it. They said, well, I guess in his interview, he talked about comparing himself to a Jadeveon Clowney, and they thought that was ridiculous because why would you do that? Clowney was accused of taking plays off, and people said about him. And the other thing was that on Saturday, he left early and didn't work out. which means I'm sure he'll work out at his pro day. Is that more of a thing that media looks at? Do team personnel folk, do they care about those things? He didn't work out on Saturday. Does it matter?
Well, it's about time and money. For example,
Okay.
I had the number one pick in Orlando Pace. Pace came um, to the combine, did part of his physical, and left, and still went number one. So I don't think that if a player decides not to work out, because we always ask our player, do you feel great today? Do you feel like it's going to be a 4-4, 4-3, 5-1, 40? If you don't feel like this is the day for you, this is not your day, don't do anything. Don't do anything. Put on the tape. Some of these guys been playing football for how many years? 10, 15 years maybe. So one more day, take a junior. A junior declare for the draft, which impacts the draft every year, the juniors. Seniors went back one more years and had not 17 more games, 13, 12, 13, 14 more games. So one afternoon workout is going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt you. Now, the guys that's at the bottom of the, fifth round, sixth round, seventh round, just barely got invited to the combine, they need to work out.
Right.
They
right.
They need all the love that they can find. So they need to work out. But if Thibodeau decided to lead, Thibodeau will still go first round.
Yeah.
Still go hear his name.
I'm talking with Dwight Thomas. Yeah, just resetting it. For those of you who are just joining, listen to Chalk Talk. I'm talking with Dwight Thomas. He's a trusted, long-time experienced sports advisor to pro athletes. He's been in the game about 25 years. He's just back from the combine, and he's letting us know kind of what happened, what he saw. And if you're a Texan fan, if you're local, I know many of you watch from other places. He said the guy to get is a kid I keep calling him kid, the young man out of Georgia, the defensive end. He would take him with the first defensive tackle. He'd take him with the first pick if he had it. That's the player the Texans need if he's there at 3. Go ahead.
Now, circle back on Thibodeau being compared to Jadeveon Clowney. I'll take that all day.
Yeah.
No matter what they say. Remember, Jadeveon went number 1.
Right.
Okay. He got with an organization that had him playing different positions. In college, he was in the dirt, playing on the end and rushed the quarterback. And he was probably one of the top defensive player against the run. But in the team that he played with, that just happened to be one of the local teams here, they had him playing different positions. So then at the end of the season, he didn't get many sacks. Well, that's because you didn't allow him to just go out and chase the quarterback. You allowed the other defensive end to do that.
And that would have been J.J. Watt.
Right.
Who's known to be a freelancer.
Yes, as a freelancer. And after he got paid the big money. Anyway, so if I'm compared to Jadeveon Clowney, Thibodeau, great. That's a great comparison. Let the media beat me up. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's what some job for some media members, that's what they're going to do. Let's talk negative of a player. To me, Clowney, yes, was a beast. He was a beast.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right. The organization, was a problem.
Yeah. And I think today, Jadeveon, I think he's a free agent.
Yes.
I mean, in this day and age, if you get the big fellow up front, bring Jadeveon back. You got somebody experienced on the end, let them brush the quarterback. Those two guys together could be the Lion King and Simba.
Well, the person that had a problem with him is gone, and that was Bill O'Brien, although Jack Easterby is still here. I don't really know where Jack, where he was on that. But, I always liked Jadeveon Clowney. I thought he got a bad rap. And for those who said he took plays off, that's an easy thing I hear them say about athletes sometimes. He took a play off. And they're insinuating that about Thibodeau. Now, quite frankly, I haven't watched enough of Oregon's games to know if that's the case or not. But everything that I've read about him and I've just seen on highlights, which of course is your best stuff, the kid can play. But I'm with you. I like the young man out of Georgia.
Yeah, I think about this. players go to the bench. Is that taking a play off? That's taking a play off. Uh, just because you're not on every play or you're not following the ball on every play, you really don't know what scheme he was in. He might have been in the zone. He was not told, you cannot go. Don't chase the quarterback to the left. Stay right over here. Stay in your position. Stay in your lane. Do your job right here. Anybody come your way, he's not going to take that play off. He's not taking plays off. He's a hard worker. Every year, he's a hard worker. And I do believe when against the run, the number one defensive line was the year the other DN was off that year. And I think they was number one in defense that year with Jadeveon, led by Jadeveon Clowney. Texas should have kept him. He should still. Well, we could talk about players.
Yeah, we could talk about a number of players that they should still have.
4, 10, 32.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of players that they should have just kept, and that defense would have been great, along with some of the offensive linemen that they allowed to get away. So Texas
like
should
Dwayne
not
Brown.
be drafted this high if they would have just kept their players in-house.
Right.
Who knows? They might have been in L.A.
They might have been in LA. Well, not with Bill O'Brien as a head coach.
Well,
let me ask you something. You mentioned number 4, Deshaun Watson, and of course, there's a high interest of people of what's going to happen with him, especially as we get closer to the draft. We know that there's the legal situation that's happening, and I think a lot of teams are waiting to see if there will be any criminal charges, and before they really, make a play for him. He has that no trade clause about where he will and will not go. What do you think his opportunities are for this coming season? I mean, I think we're probably in agreement. Teams still think as highly of him as they thought before. I don't think he can afford to sit out another season without playing and be thought of in that same way.
Well, here's my thought on number 4. First of all, he's been out of football for a year. To me, that's time served. I would go to the commissioner before all of this, the final results are in or the final verdict is in. I would go to the commissioner and sit down and present the situation. Talk to the commissioner. Find out where you are. 17 games you have sat out. No other player has been, well, unless you fail a major drug test or something, multiple times. No other players have sat out 17 games to find out, am I going to play next year? So to me, time served.
But let me ask you something.
Suspended.
Let me ask you something. So, because he wasn't suspended, right? He wasn't suspended, and if the follow up is, well, he didn't want to be with the Texans, and he elected not to play, he still got paid. That doesn't count. What do you say to that?
Well, if there was worst case scenario, let's assume there's a 2-game suspension in there. I'm just going to do the minimum. Or there could be a 5.
The minimum is 6, right? Isn't 6 the number now?
Every case is different.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a scenario where it's like, oh, he's going to get some game, and he didn't get any game. So every case is different. Don't compare yourself to another player. Don't compare to yourself when you go into the commissioner. He's not going to think about everybody else. He's going to think about you. And what have you been doing, not what you should be doing. You got to attack this on the positive side by doing that. When you go in front of the commissioner and the commissioner say, well, we expect you to do this, 1, 2, 3. I've already done those things. And he'll sit back like, oh, well, we want you to do this. We go give you 4 games. I sat out 4 games. I sat out 17. If I'm not going to get paid for those 4 games, okay. If I'm getting $500,000, okay, that's a $2 million that I lost. Bam, write a check. If he was my client, I would be proactive. I wouldn't be sitting back waiting to see what's going to happen to me. I'm going to go. If you listen to everybody and assume that you're guilty and you have to do certain things, then go ahead and do those things. Get them out the way. Because knowledge, it's like, okay, I was unaware that if you say no today and I call you tomorrow, it's harassment. Okay, so therefore I need to be aware. So I'm going to some of these organizations, um, the Women's Center, and I'm going to sit down and listen and empower me as a person to become a a spokesman, someone that say I've been
To be an
there.
ally for women who have been, yeah.
You know, like today, he should send out a tweet, "Happy International Women's Day," something like that. It's powerful on what you can and cannot do. I mean, I would tweet that versus maybe some of the other tweets, and because you want a positive image, you want a positive image in this situation because nothing has been decided. So therefore, I'm going to decide for myself and continue to get more education and more knowledge of dealing with women, if that's the case. I got to understand a lady. You know, I have sisters, I have mothers, I have aunts. They taught me what to do, how to treat a lady, and you can become a man. So if I was number four, I would be getting that experience. Not saying he haven't had it, but
Right.
I would definitely um, try to do some proactive things because, and then go to the commissioner and say, I've done these things in the last year. I've suffered for these things. I've been out the game for a year. I missed 17 games, plus maybe the playoff. What more should I do? What more should I have to give up?
Right. So
And it
I,
takes
I
me,
think I think you make a great point, and you and I've talked about it, and I've talked about it on the show. I don't think that his team, and I'm not talking about his legal team with Rusty Harden, I don't think his team that represents him has served him well or has guided him well in this process because maybe he's been doing those things. That's not what we've seen.
mhm.
We've seen the lavish trips and parties and lifestyle. Not that he doesn't deserve to have that. We shouldn't be seeing it. It's
No, we
not a
shouldn't be.
good
Yeah,
look,
we shouldn't be
right?
seeing it.
That's not the. It doesn't seem to me to be the best way to move forward right now. If I was advising him, I would advise him to do something differently, and I think that's what you're talking about. They are not. Yeah, Charles, who's a one of our is my legal expert for the show, is an attorney, says they aren't doing enough. They're not doing enough, and they're not guiding him. They're not guiding him well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when you surround yourself, you have to surround your circle should be very small and tight, and you should because it is number four corporation. He's the head. All the people around him take the advice and then say, okay, now what's best out of all these things that I should be doing? What's the best way? But you got to also remember is that I would still have already talked to the commission. I'm not saying they haven't, but I would make sure that I would talk to the commission to let him know where we are, update him
Yeah.
because he's not against you. You're representing the brand and he's representing the brand, the shield. So therefore, you guys are on the same team. You're not at odds. He wants the best for you. You want the best for him. He wants the best for himself, of course. Get some advice from the commissioner. And the
Yeah.
commissioner would tell you, four, the things you've been doing are not what we expect you to do in the future. What you've done, you've done. Okay? Let's move forward, but let's by doing the things that you should be doing, that you should have been doing this past year. Because everybody's watching.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching. Because right now, every team would love Deshaun. I remember I told Cleveland when they had the number one pick, I told them to turn on the Alabama tape and you'll find your quarterback against Clemson. That's what I told them. Cleveland didn't listen. That's fine. Okay, that's
Yeah, it
fine.
worked out.
Yeah. And I didn't represent Deshaun, but I was just saying I know talent. I
Right.
can look at you, I can watch you work out. I know talent, and the tape don't lie. And I've talked to enough scouts to tell me this guy, on and off the field, the baggage, he's a headache. He's not He's not our type of player. So I definitely understand that. I mean, some players walking around with too much jewelry at the combine, maybe, or just they're not handling themselves as a professional, and you never know who's
Who's
watching.
watching? Yeah.
And they're watching at the combine.
Yeah.
They're watching you you just don't know who's watching you. If the Texans love someone, they're following him right now. They're in his hometown.
Oh yeah. Now that I believe. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. They're talking to the school that you went. They're talking to the teachers. They're talking to your friend. They're talking to your family, and you just don't know if somebody gonna say the wrong thing to turn the team off. And that's why I've always advised all players and their families, no matter what, we all have to be on the same page. We also have to be preaching the same message. So when the media call and they ask you, how was this guy in the ninth grade? You can say all the right things. So when they come back and they put everything together and they start talking about players and they mention your client or my client or your brother, they gonna say, man, I can't find nothing wrong with this kid, whether it's true or not, because it's our job to present all the good. It's their job to bring out any negative. So,
Before we get off football, because I want to talk about a couple other situations, I want to ask you about the quarterback Collins. What do you think about him, Malik Collins?
the quarterbacks, it's really hard to judge it. You would have to watch more tape of a quarterback. I just think that it's a reach to go get him early because he still might be there a little bit later. I would in this draft, I would wait on a quarterback in the first round. Now I may be wrong, but we've seen some of the Wilson that go in the third round and become an all pro.
Right.
So this year's draft, I would just say I don't think no one is falling in love with any quarterback that's coming in the draft. I think they like the quarterbacks, but it'd be a desperate situation. I mean, if I'm in love with a quarterback, and this year, if I really, really need a quarterback, I'm calling the Texans up and say, let's make the deal, because there's nobody out there. The number one pick is Deshaun. Go get him. He's out there. I like Jameis Winston out there. I think he's better than the quarterback. So Jameis is a free agent.
Right.
People gonna talk about the 30 interceptions he threw, but talk about the 5,000 yards that he threw. It's the same offense that Brady came in and ran. He just didn't throw all the INTs. So, I mean, you got Winston out there, you got Deshaun out there, and you may have a couple other quarterbacks that just floating around. That's better than the quarterbacks that's coming in to the draft this year.
So two more things on football before I switch gears a little bit. Where do you think Deshaun Watson should go if it were up to him? What's the best place for him in terms of his future? And what are your thoughts about Davis Mills with the Texans?
Well, I think I'm not saying I love Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's probably, their quarterback is retiring. Tampa Bay quarterback is retiring. The Saints is looking for a quarterback. There are quite a few teams. San Francisco, I think, is a quarterback away. So Denver is a quarterback away. So there are choices. There are a lot of choices as far as where Deshaun should go. Now, Deshaun wants to win that ring. So just like Matthew Stafford left Detroit and went to LA and won a ring. So I do believe that Deshaun should just find him a place where he can win, that has some wide receivers, offensive linemen. If they're great, that's better, because Deshaun Watson, if he has a...
But I'm asking you, which one of those places do you think that makes the most sense for him to go? We know he wants to win.
Denver is strong.
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco beat LA twice this year uh, before the playoff. They were one game away from the Super Bowl. Denver is strong. Pittsburgh, you got a 10-year career there, and they believe in winning. I believe at one time there was a lot of talk about him going to Miami when Brian was the head coach. Brian is now in Pittsburgh. So I'm quite sure Brian is better go get number 4. You better go get number 4. There are those teams right there are 3 teams or 4
That makes
teams.
a lot of sense. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Like,
what about Davis Mills? What are your thoughts about him? And how much upside does he have?
I think that his arrow is steady pointing up. I think it's definitely pointing up and everything. Is that I advise any young men just keep working, keep studying the game. Hopefully you stay with great health, because health is a part of the game, especially in football. You know, that's like a car accident every play. You banging and you banging and you banging. So health is the thing that the teams look at is, if we pay this guy all of this money, is he going to stay healthy? Because the contracts are not guaranteed. They basically 1 year guaranteed and so forth. So
you think Davis Mills do you see him as a serviceable quarterback in the NFL, or could he be one of those 3rd round picks that gets a lot better? I mean, you know, how good do you think he can be? And I know we haven't seen a lot of him, but we did see a fair amount of him this past season.
Well, if a quarterback can just stand back there, he can hit a target. So you got to have wideouts. Quarterback is only good as his wideouts. When you get that wideout combination, quarterback wideout combination, tight end, you got to have a beast in the running back. So teams are, the defensive line is thinking, watch that running back. I mean, you take Tannehill. He had that beast as a running back.
Right.
When he went down, they had a Super Bowl team, but they didn't make it. Because as long as you got that beast as a running back and a wideout, a quarterback just for to manage the game. It's not up. So Mills is the type of guy that he needs help. He needs help. And one way of getting help is get the big fella up front and you'll get some turnovers and you're getting help.
Because we know that the Lovie Smith defense is big on not just turnovers but takeaways. He says you got to create it.
Yeah,
and he seems disruptive. Like he could create some additional disruption in that defense.
It's a Mack truck that's starting up, boom, 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 and just coming through. Boom, every play. And eventually the offensive lineman, see, he's the type of player that an offensive coordinator is worried about.
Right. It keeps him up at night.
That type of player, offensive coordinator saying, I got to design my whole playbook to always know where he is. Because my play always, if you see him on the left side, we running left, change the play. Because we're not going that way. We got to go right. So for a quarterback to get better, he needs the ball more. You need a defense to create the takeaways to give your offense. Because if you get a takeaway in the red zone, at least that's 3 points. And if the quarterback's good enough to drive for 20 yards, that's a TD off a takeaway. So he's going to be as good as the other 10 guys around him. And you need a good tight end. You need a beast on the wideout. You need 2 number 1 wideout. And you need 2 great running backs that can take it to the house at any time.
Well, I think we know, Dwight, the Texans have a lot of needs. So I'm curious to see what Nick Caserio, who some think is like the wonder child of GMs, will do in this draft. I think we'll get a chance to really see what he can do. Last season, he was real busy without a whole lot of capital. They were capped with the draft. They didn't have picks. They were cap heavy. So now we're going to see what he can put together for Lovie and his staff to work with.
Well, if you're going to mess up the draft with multiple picks. You might get one right. So therefore, I say that because if you trade Deshaun to get more multiple picks, because his draft is so deep, Actually, if you take at every position, if you take the top three or top four at every position, you're going to basically any other draft, he could be a first round pick. I like the defensive end over from the University of Houston, Logan Hall, 6'6", long arms, student of the game. I think he weighed in maybe 280. So he can add 10 pounds or he can take away 10 pounds, but he's 6'6". You put him, he's going to be on the board maybe late in the first round. If the Texans got 3 first-round picks because they traded, and maybe they trade with a team to get another first-rounder, the big fella in Logan. I mean, that's how you build your defense. Build it from the dirt. Just like you're building a home, you got to start in the dirt. So build it from the defensive line and then out.
All right, we're going to shift gears real quick before we run out of time. I know that you, especially when you work with the Postons, you guys worked in baseball. You represented baseball players. How long do you think this lockout will go on? I know that I think Tuesday is the deadline to where they can come to a deal where they get in 162 games. What are your thoughts about this lockout and how long it could last?
Well, the thing that I like about Major League Baseball Players Association and the NBA Players Association, if the NFL Players Association would have fought like the other unions in professional sports, the NFL would be a lot better for the player side. So I think that the players are saying, of course, we want guaranteed contracts. We want more money because there's money there. Players hold out because that's the only option that you have is a holdout. You don't have many options. So if you're holding out for guaranteed money, it's worth it. It's really worth it. It could end at any time. I really don't know the 1 or 2 or 3 sticking points. And I know it's about money.
It is about money. I tell you, one of the big sticking points is that the union is fighting for that players who are not eligible for arbitration, for that pool of money to be bigger for those players earlier in their career, like a Yordan Alvarez, right, who has been a tremendous piece of the Astros puzzle, but because he was not arbitration eligible, he's limited on what he can make. So I just use him as an example because he's one that comes to mind. So they're fighting for that, and they don't want to extend the number of teams in postseason like the owners do. But the big piece is what it has to do with that those non-arbitration eligible players, and of course always money and what's guaranteed is an issue. What I do know is in terms of what the owners, the number of games for the owners where it starts to affect their pocketbooks is 140 games. That's where it will start eating into the revenue from those TV contracts. So They would be motivated by the time it gets to 140 games, because right now the players are the ones who are losing. They're not postponing games, they're canceling games. And so I think the owners are basically saying, we want to remind you guys that we in charge and you're not, because players have said we will play without a new CBA while we're working through it, and the owners have said, nah, we good. We're just gonna lock you out.
Yeah. They have the money. The owners have the money, and
right.
If you're an owner and that's what you feel is right, but I'm gonna side with the players. Is that the players? If you want something, fight for it. Fight for it. Fight for it. You know, for example, I think there's a clause in the Major League Baseball as a rookie that they have you for so many years and you have to go to AAA or something like that, and then you can come up. And I think that therefore you're losing money because you basically is a beast on the baseball field and at bat, but they got you down in AAA because of the contract situation. And you cannot become a free agent for so many years. I think baseball.
Well, even if they bring you up, you can't get the money, and that's the issue.
You can't get the money
because you're not eligible for arbitration yet.
Yeah,
because you're
and
under
that's
the
the
rookie
part. I
deal.
think, yeah, I think that's the part that if I go to AAA, once I come up, I should be able to renegotiate my contract at that point. And I think if the players are holding out for that, that's worth it because I am your starting shortstop. I am your starting first baseman. I am your starting pitcher. But you're holding me back because you don't want to pay me. And that's the point, which causes a team to lose games. And
Right.
don't nobody want to lose games. So I think it's the contract part because nobody want to lose games. I mean, the draft has how many rounds? So they're not trying to necessarily, as some people might say, tank to get the
Yeah,
number one
it's
pick.
too many.
There's so many rounds and so many great players out there that, you know, bring the guy up, renegotiate the contract, and let him play and let him have a Hall of Fame career.
Dwight Thomas, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. You have to come back because there's so much to talk about, and you are a wealth of knowledge. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. I agree with you about the young man from Georgia. We'll see what these Texans do once the new football year officially starts. What is it, on the 16th with free agency? Today is the day for franchise tag. So a lot. It's like football never really ends, right? It's always going on.
And the Texans can get right back into the thick of things with. They first have to decide on what they go do with Ford. You can't sit out another year and hoping to trade him down the road. If he's not going to be a Texan, then go ahead and trade him and get what you can right now, because the draft is deep.
Right.
It's deep.
But here's the thing, Dwight. I have to keep saying this. Deshaun has to also be a willing participant because he's got that trade clause.
Both sides.
So
and I think
both
right
sides
now,
have got to come together and get it done.
Yeah, I think Deshaun right now, you got to have a meeting with him because he's going through a lot right now. But I would have a meeting with him and say, okay, Deshaun, we got to make decisions, because if the legal part turns south and goes bad, you're not going to get what you thought you was going to get when before there was 22 other reasons to trade him. So now you got to say to yourself, what if he does get suspended? What if this? What if that? What if that? What if these cases go, he's found guilty? Nobody's going to trade for him. I mean, the Texans don't want to play him, but they want 3 first rounders.
Right.
Okay. So if you could get 2 first rounders for him, or 1 and some starters and maybe a future pick, that might be the best. Right now, you got to take the best deal.
I think that both sides are going to have to go back to their little corners and say, okay, we're each going to have to give a little bit, because we're not going to all get everything. But the situation, if it's beyond repair, and if he's not going to come into the fold and he wants out, then they've got to figure it out. Hey, Dwight, we are up against it. Okay.
One last thing. If I'm Lovey, come on back. Come on back and play right here. Let's play right here and let's make it work here. That's all I would say. Come on back forward. Come on back. Come on back.
Come on back into the house. Come back to the family. Yeah. All right, Dwight. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. We will talk soon. And thanks for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with the Chalk Talk audience. We appreciate you.
Okay. And again, happy International Women's Day.
Yes.
I guess I'm going to go play Prince song. Don't he have a... anyway. Okay.
I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you. That was Dwight Thomas. He is a longtime sports advisor. I call him an expert because he's been in the game for a long time. I appreciate his knowledge. Before we get out of here, there's 2 things I want to tell you. The Brittney Griner situation, which is not looking good for the basketball player out of the Houston area, went to Nimitz High School, played at Baylor, was over in Russia, trying to get back home, and stopped in the airport and accused of having hash oil. And it's unfortunate, but especially all that's happening now in terms of it doesn't look great for her. So prayers for Brittney Griner that they could that she can that the U.S. can help her. There's not a whole lot the U.S. can do. They've already done put sanctions on Russia because of just even the war in Ukraine war. The WNBA, I know, had asked players, suggested that they leave, told them to get out back in February, and unfortunately, actually a couple months ago is when they first started telling players to leave. It doesn't really look great for her. She should have left. She is there now, so all we can do is send her the best thoughts and prayers. The other thing I wanted to share with you, I promise you I've got to get it in, is Russell Westbrook. Lakers fans are not in love with Russell Westbrook, okay? And now they are really kind of attacking his family. So I'm going to let you hear before we go, from Russell in post-game, really talking about what's been happening. Let me bring it up. So this is Russell Westbrook.
I think, for one, I 100% stand behind my wife and how she's feeling, because it's not just about this year. Right now, she's reached a point, and my family has reached a point to where it's really weighing on them, and it's very unfortunate, just for me personally, because this is just a game. This is just a game. This is not end all be all. And when it comes to basketball, I don't mind the criticism of missing and making shots, but the moment it becomes where my name is getting shamed, it becomes a issue. I've kind of let it go in the past, just because it never really bothered me, but it really kind of hit me the other day. Honestly, I was, me and my wife was at teacher-parent conference for my son, and the teacher told me, she's like, Noah, he's so proud of his last name. He writes it everywhere. He writes it on everything. He tells everybody, he walks around and says, I'm Westbrook, that's his last name. And I kind of sat there in shock, and it hit me like, damn, like I can no longer allow people, for example, Westbrook to me is now shaming, like it's shaming my name. It's my legacy for my kids. It's a name that means more, not just to me, but to my wife, to my mom, my dad, the ones that kind of paved the way for me. And that's just one example, man. That kind of hit myself and my wife in a place where it's not great, man. And I think a lot of times, I let it slide, but it's now trying to put a stop to that and put it on notice. Like, there's a difference, and we need to make sure that it's understood. And every time I do hear it now, I will make sure that I address it. And
okay, so that is him talking about, obviously, the name, it is a big deal. But the thing that I think is, to me, most concerning are the threats on his family, his wife, and his kids. And so, that's when it goes too far. And that's one of the downsides of social media, because people can sit behind these computers or these little devices and be invisible and spew a lot of harmful things. So Laker fans, do better. That's all I'm going to say. You've got a great legacy of champions and all of that. Do better. Listen, we are out of time. Thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk today. A special thanks to Dwight Thomas for joining me on Chalk Talk his first time. I hope he will come back. Of course, I had to weigh in and ask Charles Graydon about the Brittney Griner situation from a legal perspective. I didn't even talk about Calvin Ridley, the Atlanta Falcons, who has been suspended for a year for betting on football while he was out. And I don't even know if it'll just be a year, because now he on Twitter saying like foolishness. But at any rate, you just got to think, people. You got to think, and you got to make better choices. Happy International Women's Day. Tell some woman that you know Happy International Women's Day. Do something good for somebody that's a woman, right? Do something that's productive and kind, and make sure that you share this video, wherever you're watching it, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. Share it with your community, and I will see you back here next Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm now going to head over to support a woman a friend, a client, and above all else, a sister friend in Kim Edwards Williams. She's speaking today at a luncheon, and so I'm headed there to support her and those other women. Keep doing what you do. Make sure you're vaccinated, people. If you're not, get vaccinated. Continue to practice. Be safe. Wash your hands when you're in really crowded places like indoors. Go ahead and toss that mask on. And remember, do something kind for yourself and something kind for somebody else. I'll see you next week. Make it a great week, everybody.